Could you imagine being inside your partner's body while another dude is banging her?
Or just being in her body as she looks at someone else and you feel the heart rate start to go.
Ugh.
Just those subtle moments, knowing she's being aroused.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tuck's going to kill him.
Talk about down on his luck naval aviator.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-host, Ash Putter Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. And at the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button, share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, you can subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, to hang out with us live all week long, please follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games and host watch parties. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Well, Gene, let me take you on a trip back to August of 2020.
Ooh.
During the pandemic, Jody G was sitting home and said, you know what? There's a lot going on in the world today, a lot going on in life. I think it is a perfect time to go to Shat the Movies and commission the 1987 American science fiction comedy, Innerspace.
And Jody wrote in and said, "Hey, Shat crew. First off, I found you guys through Westworld and Game of Thrones sometime in 2017. I then made my way to the movies. I don't think I've missed a movie since that time and listened to most of the back catalog, skipping ones I have not seen yet. I am a huge fan of 80s and 90s movies, and the weekly dose of Shat gets me through my commutes. I've recently converted my wife. We have wildly different tastes in movies due to the recent Heathers, Clueless, and Adventures in Babysitting pods. I feel the need to let you know about the fights we've had that you are not aware of. Several times I would find myself shouting at my car radio, calling you things I am not proud of, mostly due to your tragic rankings of the following masterpieces that somehow rank below average: Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Caddyshack, Dune, The Last Starfighter, and Willow. I even named my cat Willow. I'll admit I have not seen the latter two in years, but they are beloved in my memory, all while putting Under Siege and Tremors as above average. Besides a few hiccups, though, the system works, and we can still be friends. If any of you find yourselves lost and scared in Eastern Iowa, I'd love to take you out for a beer. On to Innerspace. The VHS collections at family and friends' houses were always a wonder to me, particularly because a trip to the theater was a rare occasion living in small-town Iowa. My uncle had a vast collection of VHS tapes, including some I probably shouldn't have been watching as an 8 or 9-year-old. The Toxic Avenger, for example. Whenever we would go out for a family function, I would frantically look for the next movie to slake my thirst. One of these was Innerspace around 1990. I was into sci-fi, and the concept of the movie had me hooked. Over the years, my love for the film has not diminished, though now it's more than, wow, he's really small. Somehow, there is a great chemistry between Dennis Quaid and Martin Short, even though they don't share any screen time until the end. Meg Ryan is super 80s hot in this as well. One tidbit I didn't realize until recently was Mr. Ego was played by Vernon Wells, our favorite mesh-wearing tough guy from Commando and Weird Science. All in all, a great nostalgia movie for me with some goofy choices, but still enjoyable. I'd probably give it 1 to 1.5 wipes, and I'm definitely interested in where you would put it. Thanks for all that you do. Commissioning a movie was a small price to pay for the years of entertainment. Jody G.
Jody, going over that list of movies that you felt were unfairly panned, I can single-handedly take credit for all of those because I felt that Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Caddyshack, Dune, and The Last Starfighter and Willow were all below average, I believe. Maybe with the exception of no, I thought The Last Starfighter was pretty garbage too. Also, Under Siege is one of those movies you really got to think about because you got naked lady jumping out of a cake, you got Steven Seagal with those one-liners, you got the action, swimming to a submarine. It's a pretty damn good movie.
I got to stand by our Tremors, too. Tremors is a great film. And I just want to point out, Clueless, Adventures in Babysitting, all those movies, you're welcome, Jody, because those scores, I feel like, were really held down by yours truly. So,
Gene, I will also say I contributed to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But, Jody, go back and watch Willow. That's a false memory. You think it's great. You think it's wonderful. You picture Val Kilmer out in the snow and the dragon. It is a fucking disaster. It's right up there with Showgirls.
Showgirls is amazing. Hashtag justice for Showgirls.
Well, Jody, Innerspace, as you know, is a 1987 science fiction comedy inspired by the 1966 science fiction film Fantastic Voyage and starring Dennis Quaid, Martin Short, and Meg Ryan. It earned $42 million at the box office, including movie rentals, and won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects in 1987. Ash, Big D, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of movies. We'll start with you, Big D. What are your memories of Innerspace?
So I was 14 when this came out, and I liked shrinking movies. There was a few of them in the early 80s. One in particular, The Incredible Shrinking Woman. It was Lily Tomlin. She was a housewife who had some kind of chemical mix-up with cleaners or something that caused her to shrink. There's a terrifying scene there where she shrinks and falls into the garbage disposal. To this day, I can remember being a kid. This was 81, so I was maybe 7 or 8 when I saw it. It terrified me of garbage disposals to this day. So I loved that movie. I loved Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But this one, it somehow snuck through. I mean, I remember the box cover. I remember the art and thinking it was great. But until sitting down and watching it this week for Jody, I had very little actual memory of this movie.
I think that's so funny because you're like shrinking movies. I didn't realize that was a genre in and of itself because
it is.
The only shrinking movie I remember is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and then the, series of sequels that followed that one. But I had never seen this movie before. I don't think I'd ever heard of this movie before. I love Meg Ryan because I'm a human being and it's hard not to love her. And I think Dennis Quaid is okay. I made pretty clear on Three Amigos my thoughts about Martin Short. Not a huge fan of his, but I like sci-fi. Shrinking's okay.
Shrinking's okay.
It's okay.
I was a kid when I first saw this. I think I saw it right around like 1988, maybe. It was my first time. You guys remember like your first trip out of state without your parents? It's like a big memory, I think, for every kid. You really always recall that. And this is my first trip out of state without my mom. And I went to California. And so we went and stayed with a friend of the family and her husband in their apartment. Now, this is the first time I'd ever like spent the night over at a house where like my mom wasn't around, but I got to see how other adults interacted and they didn't have any kids. So I was like, well, what do they do? I was expecting something to be drastically different from my life at home. And it really was because they went out and rented a movie and then came home and had wine and watched Innerspace and ate dinner that they'd cooked. And it seems so fucking foreign to me. And now as an adult, I still don't do that. And I don't understand if they were just a weird couple. Like, when you guys were young, newlyweds, and before you had kids, did you guys go out to the video store and get a video and come home and watch it together?
They may have done that just because you were in the house. They were trying to do something to incorporate you. Let's rent a fun movie about shrinking people.
It would explain why they got a PG movie. Yeah, maybe that was it.
Yeah, video rental stores were long dead by the time I got married. But we used to go, Tom and I saw a movie every Friday night for like 3 straight years.
That's exciting.
We did other shit too, but I'm a huge movie fan. That's why I'm on a movie podcast, Gene.
Big D, let's get to the trailer.
Test pilot Tuck Pendleton wants to make history. Supermarket clerk Jack Putter needs a vacation.
Jack, you're late. That's not good. You know it's coupon day.
Lieutenant Pendleton is about to be miniaturized. placed into this needle and then injected into this rabbit.
Rock and roll.
But something went wrong. And Tuck's about to get a new destination. Inside Jack Putter.
I'm in a man.
Hello, can you hear me?
I'm possessed!
Now, Jack's got twice the problems.
How you doing, Jack?
But he's double the man. With Tuck on his side.
Kicking more accounts.
In his gut. And on his case.
You're not gonna bag groceries all your life, are you, Jack?
And only 24 hours left for Jack to get out of danger. So that Tuck can get out of Jack. Dennis Quaid, Martin Short. Give yourself a shot of adventure. Innerspace.
Down on his luck, naval aviator Lieutenant Tuck Pendleton volunteers for a secret miniaturization experiment. His submersible pod is transferred into a syringe to be injected into a rabbit, but the lab is attacked. Experiment supervisor Ozzie Wexler escapes with the syringe and is shot by the evil Mr. Igo. Before dying, Ozzie injects Tuck and the pod into an unsuspecting Jack Putter, a hypochondriac Safeway grocery clerk.
So, watching this movie, let me set the scene for you. It opens up with this really weird, like, alien landscape, and, you're confused as to what it is. Is it a planet? No, it's ice in a scotch glass. And so while you're looking and discovering that this is ice and not an alien landscape, it comes up Steven Spielberg. And I go, oh, yeah, Steven Spielberg directed this. I had no idea. Then I got really confused about 10 minutes in because the other Spielberg films I'd watched, even the not so amazing ones, he's so big on character development. I mean, my goodness, he was able to take a non-talking, wrinkly looking alien thing and make it, something that broke all of our hearts even through to this day. So character development is what he does, but these characters aren't developed at all. And that begins a problem that kind of becomes consistent throughout the film. Because for this movie to work, you have to really be invested in Dennis Quaid's character. You have to think that he's like this misunderstood guy, but instead he winds up being like this, faceless, like Lothario. And I don't know, like it was him, it was Meg Ryan, it was Martin Short, no character development at all. And I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, just to clarify for people, Steven Spielberg executive produced this. Yeah. That means almost nothing. The executive producer is not like sitting there in the office telling the director what to do, right? That just means he was involved essentially in the funding and the overall management of the film. And I guarantee you, after this movie was screened, they're like, we need to put Spielberg's name all over this motherfucker. Put all over the cover art, put all over the opening credits. We want people to believe this is a Spielberg film.
Yeah, I don't want to take so much as an issue with the character development. I will later on, but I do want to take an issue with the description of Tuck. Down on his luck, naval aviator. Tuck is an asshole. I couldn't believe as the movie starts, he's an embarrassment to himself. He's an embarrassment to the uniform. The fact that all of those other heroes from all of the different branches choose to take him and beat him publicly tells you everything you need to know about Tuck as a person. And the way he treats Lydia, it made me happy she broke up with him in the first 3 minutes.
Now, Jody was talking about Meg Ryan, who plays Lydia, being 80s hot. And she looked pretty good, although her hair seemed to change lengths magically. I don't know if it was like extensions or whatever throughout the movie, or if they filmed it in a weird sequence. But Meg Ryan, it's hard to make her look bad. What bothered me about this character wasn't her looks. It was really the character itself, the way it was written. Because this movie does something I absolutely hate. You have this sex pot female journalist, right? And her role is to just be a hanger-on of the super manly man, right? So you got Tuck here. He lets her hang around because she's hot and he's sleeping with her. She wants to get the scoop, so she sticks around or whatever. And I think it really made life miserable for women journalists for years to come from this. And still to this day, like we haven't recovered from this era of journalists when they are women being written in this way where they have to use their sexuality to get the story. And I got to tell you, I've worked with dozens of female journalists in my career, and none of them were like this.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I will say one thing that this character at least gave us was a journalist that asked questions and that at least was involved in the story. It was a huge improvement from our last sci-fi film that involved a female journalist, My Science Project, where she asked zero questions the entire movie. At least here, she asks a couple.
Well, to be fair, she was a journalism student.
Doesn't matter.
She hadn't honed her chops.
I asked more questions as a high school newspaper reporter and main section editor of that newspaper. It was very cool.
But if you remember, she seemed to be egging them on. She was an accomplice. She was trying to write a book at the end. So I don't think she was doing any groundbreaking discoveries. But you want the reporter to ask questions. I want the scientist to ask questions. How can we build this tech in a way that's simple, it's repeatable, it's safe? No, they go the opposite way. They make it overly complicated. What the fuck is up with the matching chips? That is just wrought with problems. What happened if one of the chips goes bad? What happens if they mismatch chips? It's a mistake. And I thought that the big breakthrough was minimizing the pod. We're going to shrink it down. Wow, we have a proof of concept. Shrink the pod, enlarge the pod, sell the tech. Movie is over.
That's it. 5 minutes done.
It's over.
But do we
Groundbreaking
still get a shirtless Dennis Quaid in it?
Oh, that's the bonus. That's a kicker. It's the after party, where they're celebrating the sale to I don't know, Jeff Bezos, whoever was his predecessor.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree. And I mean, my question here is why even have the fucking rabbit there that they're going to inject him into? What is the purpose of the rabbit? And so here you are, and it's a better situation because you're inside a man. Are you even recording from the inside? Are you keeping the footage? What is the purpose of your being there? It feels like a complete waste of time.
I would half expect this group of scientists to shrink Dennis Quaid, put him in a rabbit, then shrink the rabbit and put the rabbit into another animal. It was ridiculous. It was just too crazy. Or they were going to weaponize rabbits. That could be why the military was coming. You control the animal and you could use them for surveillance and then also maybe a stealth attack.
What bothered me was this raid, this invasion of the lab by the rival scientists, which first of all, I didn't know there were scientist wars, scientist gang wars like this, but they break in, they fire extinguish everyone unconscious, and they're trying to get the technology. As far as I'm concerned, they've got the technology. The whole fucking lab is still there. The chips are there. All the scientists you just knocked out can explain everything to you. Instead, you're chasing after Ozzy, and Ozzy takes off with the syringe. Why is he risking his life? What does he think he's going to accomplish here? He didn't take the whole lab with him, all the notes, all the tech. It's all sitting right there. So he leaves. Everything is still there for them to steal. And the only thing he's got is a submersible, which is not the key part of the tech. They could just do another capsule and shrink that down.
Okay, well, Gene, you missed something. There's pairs. There's matching chips. There's one that was in the lab and one on the ship. So you needed both in order to do both halves of it. But that makes it even worse. Ozzy now fucking willfully signs the death warrant of Tuck because he's injected him into a stranger. He didn't tell him, hey, go to the police, go to this lab, you have him in you. So theoretically, Jack is going to walk around just thinking I got pricked and he's going to run out of oxygen and die. So Ozzy was not heroic in this decision.
Yeah, if you leave him behind, at least there's a chance that they enlarge him and at least he gets to live.
Yes.
And I want to point out, sure, there's matching chips, but they managed to shrink another one with one chip later. The problem is you just can't unshrink it. So I don't know. I will say this reminded me of something very nostalgic from my childhood. When I was growing up, my family went to Disney World at least twice a year. We were huge Disney World freaks. And when we would go, there was this ride in Epcot that we rode every single time that was called Body Wars. And anybody who went to Disney during the 90s loved Body Wars. And it was in that weird place where you could take the tour of the plants, to find out how plants grew. And it was my family that was super conservative thought it was really liberal because they talked about climate change. And it was in that building. And so you went through and you rode the Body Wars. And this movie looked identical to the footage from that ride, from the way they showed the fat cells to how the bloodstream, how it looked like it was Jell-O. I don't know if they ripped it off. I don't know if Body Wars ripped them off. I don't know if they just shared footage because this movie was such an absolute disaster that this was how they, reaped a profit, was to sell it to Disney to make a ride out of. But those low-tech special effects, there was something about them that made me feel very comfortable and made me feel super nostalgic for Body Wars in the 90s.
Yeah, in this podcast, we talk about how the entire generation that we speak to finds comfort in the nostalgia of 80s and 90s movies. I think all of us went to that same Museum of Science and Technology that had all the layouts that looked exactly like this. Like, go explore the lungs. What's going on in the digestive system? And then there's that little piece of wood that you flip over and look inside of it. And there's never anything exciting in there, but you do it every time you go. It's oddly comforting. I think that part of the movie still holds up. I mean, there's a reason why it won an Academy Award. The visual effects are still pretty good for 1987.
Agreed.
Well, after attempts to radio the lab are unsuccessful, Tuck navigates the pod to the optic nerve and implants a camera. He makes contact by attaching another device to Jack's inner ear, enabling him to talk to Jack. He explains that he is running out of oxygen and needs to be extracted. At the lab, the scientists explain to Tuck and Jack that the other group stole one of 2 computer chips that are vital to the process. Their mastermind is Victor Scrimshaw, and his henchmen include Dr. Kenker, Igo, and the Cowboy.
So I understand what the movie's trying to do. They're trying to do a lot of backstory, but do it at a superficial level. I wish they had just reallocated the time. Spend less time with Jack at the doctor, at work, or Tuck being a complete fuck up. Both of these things never really lead to an end. I understand we want to know why Tuck is volunteering for this job and why Jack always thinks he's sick. So when he starts hearing voices, but you could have spent it on developing the villains. Those are the key to making us care about this movie. Find out what are their motives, what are their capabilities, what are they going to do? I mean, I wanted to learn about Dr. Kanker. She almost blows Jack in the back of that freezer truck. I have a way to warm you up. I was like, wow, this movie's going somewhere I never expected. Or Dr. Ego, that's the first supervillain that has a sex toy attachment for his robot arm. I've never seen that in a movie before. Why don't they spend time on these guys and then we would understand the second half of the movie?
Yeah, the bad time allocation is endemic in this film. The lab scenes, for 10 minutes, you just got scientists babbling out terms. Visual spectral indicator, electromagnetic cheese grater, whatever. I don't understand what they're saying. No one understands what the hell's going on in this lab. There's computers just doing computer things. It's wholly unnecessary and an absolute waste of time. And when you look at a movie that's 2 hours long with a razor thin plot, you could trim a couple of things here. Although I would have added a couple of minutes to see the blowjob in the refrigerator truck.
For sure.
And speaking of doctors.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, say you're Jack. You're at the mall one day. A guy in a lab coat who has a bleeding wound through his chest stumbles into you and sticks a needle in you. Later, you start feeling unwell. You're getting headaches. You're spazzing out at the grocery store. They take you to the doctor and you're telling your doctor about all your symptoms. You don't mention that strange man that injected something into your ass before dying from a gunshot wound. That might help your doctor diagnose what's wrong with you.
I mean, he's a hypochondriac. This is a pinprick attack. He should have been screaming that he has AIDS, that it was some junkie who had attacked him, because that actually started happening right around this time. There was 3 cases in New York of teenagers who were going around and injecting people. There wasn't AIDS in it, but it was to freak people out. That would have taken this in a really dark twist. But yeah, he should have been worried if he had AIDS. And I think it's also a problem with the casting. And I kept subconsciously thinking, I wish Rick Moranis was doing this role. This would be great with Rick Moranis. Then it clicked. They chose Rick Moranis for this role in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids 2 years later. But if you make that subtle switch, I think this movie is noticeably better.
I don't think it takes Rick Moranis. I think it takes pretty much anyone else that was an actor in the 80s, because Martin Short in general he just looks so strange, right? And he looks weird in this movie. And later on in the film, Jack's role is supposed to have a little bit of sex appeal. And he has this kiss with Meg Ryan that I was just cringing because it was so bad. And there's nothing sexy about Martin Short. And that's the problem. You needed a nerd with a little bit of swag in this. And Martin Short has no swag, zero swag.
Ash, You put this thought in my head that I'm not going to be able to get over now, which is the remake of Innerspace, and it's Aziz Ansari.
Yes.
Oh, damn. It's a needle in my ass.
Treat yourself. Because, I mean, Aziz Ansari, if you watch Masters of None, he's got a little bit of swag to it. Like, you buy that he, you know, a girl would want to have sex with him. Martin Short was wearing his dad's clothes and his mom's foundation because his face is so pancakey in this movie. I mean, he just looks so awkward. And speaking of Aziz Ansari, in Masters of None, there's that really precious dance scene that he has in season 2 that's absolutely amazing. And he's awkward, but he still is adorable. And Martin Short tries to dance in this one. And I think they're trying to give us that same type of scene where we're supposed to be like, oh, look at him. He's the nerd that just never had a shot. And instead, it's one of the most annoying dance scenes that I think we've covered. And I know I complained about like Arnold and True Lies and that tango scene, and I've complained other times, but I would take any of those over this because his legs are so wiggly. And I don't know about y'all, but all I could see is him on Arrested Development when he plays Uncle Jack. It's the same named character when he plays Uncle Jack and he is paralyzed. And so he can't use his legs and his legs just get whipped around and hit everyone. And that's the gag. That's what it looks like here. He looks like he's some like poorly constructed off-brand Stretch Armstrong whose legs cannot be controlled. And it wasn't good.
Yeah, Ash, Martin Short has one joke. Like, this is his joke. He did it on SNL. He did it in Three Amigos. He did it earlier in the movie at the doctor's office. The dude needs some new material. And again, when you get drunk, you don't have to dance. Like, there are other things you can do that are more interesting here. Like anything that happened in Arthur, starring Dudley Moore. Big fan of Arthur, Commission Arthur. But like, there are cool ways to be shithouse drunk that are way funnier than whatever the hell was happening in this movie.
Agreed.
Well, Jack contacts Tuck's estranged girlfriend, Lydia Maxwell, a reporter who has dealings with the cowboy. They learn that he plans to buy the computer chip from Scrimshaw. After locating and knocking him unconscious, Tuck uses the pod's equipment to control Jack's face muscles, altering his features so he looks like the cowboy. Lydia and Jack, who is posing as the cowboy, meet with Scrimshaw to steal the chip from him. However, as they are about to take possession of it, Jack's nervousness overrides the transformation of his face. Igo captures them and takes them to a laboratory. While imprisoned, Jack and Lydia share a kiss that transfers Tuck into Lydia's body. Once taken to the laboratory, the criminals shrink Igo and inject him into Jack to locate Tuck, kill him, and obtain the other chip that is attached to the pod. Okay, Jody. I want to give you your money's worth on this pod. So I will say there's one thing I enjoyed about this movie, quite a bit actually, which was this Martin Short, Dennis Quaid team up. And it's all about Dennis Quaid. This has nothing to do with Martin Short doing a good job. But seeing Dennis Quaid's cool, like infectiously come through Martin Short's bumbling mess of futility was the saving grace of this movie. There were a few moments where Jack really channeled his inner Tuck and it worked. And I honestly think it's just because I like Dennis Quaid so much. Like Dennis Quaid in the cockpit of the submersible, he's an enjoyable guy. I like watching him. And when he came out through Martin Short, that was enjoyable, but I don't think it was enough to save the movie.
No. And I think they kept adding layers to it. You said it was cool to see Tuck coming out of Jack's body. That's great. Now let's throw in the complexity of bringing in the cowboy. It wasn't necessary. The cowboy now adds that mix where they're going to do that big face change. So that pushes Tuck to the side. We almost lose him for a good part of the movie.
Yep.
And the cowboy, I don't even know that you need him in this. We spend time with him on the plane. He's putting out the cigarette in his hand or the cigar at Club Inferno in a hotel. It does nothing. And then when he has that face change, my brain was just like, you have seen this before. And I'm like, what was it? And I'm like, okay, that's Total Recall where they wear the mask, or at the end when Arnold's head like explodes when he gets out into the Martian atmosphere. So I look it up, and yes, Rob Bottin also did Total Recall in 1990. So this movie, I think he just used the exact same rig, but threw an Arnold skin over it, because this was the exact same thing. And if I was like somebody who was high up in this movie's production, I'd be pissed. That's somewhat like that's just stealing.
I'm just imagining Steven Spielberg showing up on set, and he checked in on this movie twice. The first time he went into the artist studio and he said, all right, what do the sets look like? What does the inside of the body look like? The internals for Jack. And they're like, hey, check it out, Steve. Look what we got here. He's like, oh, this looks great, guys. Great job. A couple months later, he comes back again. He's like, all right, so I want to see this whole face changing thing. Make sure that it's going to be cleared for the theater. Is it going to look good? And they showed him. He said, yeah, it looks pretty good, man. Like, this is all right.
Yeah.
This, you know what? This movie's doing great. I'll check out later. I'll see you guys at the theater.
Exactly.
I just want to know why the pod had this technology in it. Like, if they were going in a rabbit, like, was the rabbit going to turn into a fox or something like that? Like,
fuck that. What about the technology where he can send out like EMPs and blow up TVs and VCRs? Why is that necessary?
the electromagnetic pulse. I don't know. But I mentioned the kiss earlier. And so Martin Short and Meg Ryan's characters, they kiss. And upon kissing, Tuck is transferred from Jack's body to Lydia's body. And so now he's floating around in his ex-girlfriend's insides. And I don't know why, but this felt like such a massive violation to me for him to just all of a sudden be in her body. And yes, I get it. He's been quote unquote inside her because they've had sex before, but he's like inside her, and it's gross. And I just want to point out too, spoiler alert, she's pregnant. The fetus that he goes and shines his light on and probably has blinded his future child for all time. You know, that fetus is at most 8 weeks old because they make very clearly at the beginning, 2 months later. And at 8 weeks old, a fetus is the size of a red bean, and it's nowhere near that humanoid. It still looks like a tadpole and kind of freaky as shit. So I didn't like this part of this movie at all.
I mean, it's safe to assume that they fucked earlier than that one night.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe.
But
she's not showing.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing is if the baby's that big, yeah, you should be showing. And right away when it cuts away from that scene of the fetus, she's wearing like the tightest outfit possible too, just to emphasize the fact that Meg Ryan tiny. Ash, you're not alone in thinking that this felt like some sort of a violation. And all I could think while I was watching this is they were like, how are we going to let the audience know that he's now inside her body? Oh, well, women can have babies. That's what they do. Let's put a fetus in here. This one can have baby. And it might be offensive just because Meg Ryan's only job there is to be a plot device. Or maybe it's because Tuck is excited about impregnating a woman who left him. I felt like he was just excited to have a claw or an anchor inside of her. He's like, oh, shit, can't leave me now, bitch.
Got you trapped.
I was more offended by the cavalier attitude that Tuck takes towards their bodies. You're in the heart. And he, bust out the laser. Let's cut open this artery to escape. He doesn't care about where he is in the body, what he's doing. You said he blinded that baby. I could picture him cutting his way out of the uterus and just doing damage. I'm surprised he just didn't fucking just kill them unintentionally or intentionally. Because Jack goes in for that kiss. What happens if Tuck is actually watching? And Tuck gets angry and then he's running out of oxygen? He might just go all the way and decide in some kind of revenge killing to just open up one of those blood vessels for good.
Could you imagine being inside your partner's body while another dude is banging her?
Or just being in her body as she looks at someone else and you feel the heart rate start to go.
Ugh.
Just those subtle moments, knowing she's being aroused.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tuck's going to kill him.
Talk about down on his luck, naval aviator. Well, once Igo has been injected, Jack and Lydia escape, steal back the chip, and order everyone in the laboratory at gunpoint into the miniaturization device. However, not knowing how to operate it, they only manage to shrink everyone down to half their original size. Tuck, now inside Lydia, finds a growing baby and realizes that she is pregnant with his child. By going to her eardrum and playing their song, Sam Cooke's Cupid, he is able to alert them as to what has happened. Jack and Lydia kiss again to transfer him back. They frantically drive back to the lab in order to enlarge him, not realizing that the shrunken Scrimshaw and Kanker are hiding in the back seat. When they attempt to subdue Jack and Lydia, Igo locates Tuck in Jack's esophagus and attacks him. Tuck disables Igo's craft and he is killed after Tuck drops him into Jack's stomach.
So, Gene, you mentioned how you think that Spielberg was on set to see those two special effects. I'm wondering if the Academy Award did the same thing, that they just fast forwarded through parts of this movie, because the miniature sets, they look great, Ash. It does look like Body Wars. And that's why it won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. But I'm offended because you now get to the end and they either ran out of a budget or just did not care when it came to the 50% shrunken Canker and Scrimshaw, that car chase scene, where first they used little people dressed up to run out so you can see the feet. And then in the back seat, that looked like a completely different special effects crew did that. That's a different movie. And I think they should have lost the Academy Award for that alone.
I disagree, Big D. This was not anywhere near as bad as like Willow, where you had the brownies. That looked like dog shit. This is not nearly that bad. I kind of liked them being tiny with big objects, like Scrimshaw with the giant phone. That took some real dedication. That was a very big phone.
What about the arms? When they're trying to choke them in like the car, the arms didn't match the bodies. It was obviously forced perspective, but it just did not work.
I mean, they had to make a chase scene with a Volvo exciting. So what are you going to do?
True.
Well, I wish they put some more dedication into the research about, I don't know, the human body, because I think this movie, the timeline in it, it's either that they didn't care about details. And I know, Gene, you complain sometimes about like maps and them not having straight lines and perfect arrows, but the details in this are like the most egregious lack of details ever, because it's either that or they don't understand the female body, because you got your guy here who's traveling by mouth in Lydia. So she, swallows him down, and somehow he travels by mouth to her uterus, somehow gets up inside her cervix and into the actual uterus, which, by the way, when a woman's pregnant, the cervix is pretty closed. And spoiler alert, there's no opening connected to the stomachs. I don't know how he winds up in there with the fetus. And then makes his way back again to the stomach and into the mouth and transfers out again. In a ship that tiny, there's no way he makes that kind of time. And there's no way that, unless he's cutting through organs and breaking through seams of the body that we don't see, there's no way he sees all these things.
This is Jon Snow jetpacking around Westeros in season 7. This is ridiculous. And yes, you forgot a big one. He had time to go up into the eardrum and play the music so she would hear it, and then come back down. So either they just did not pass anatomy class in school, or they just didn't care. I was expecting you could go from the toe to the, to the behind the eyeball in like 2 seconds flat.
Mm-hmm.
So we've mentioned all these characters in the movie. We got Lydia, we got Scrimshaw, we got Jack, we got Tuck. All these actors are great in one movie or more. It's just not this movie. Scrimshaw was RJ in UHF. Martin Short, obviously Ned Niederlander in Three Amigos. Meg Ryan was dazzling in Top Gun. Dennis Quaid in The Right Stuff and a host of other movies is pretty much always good. And he's not bad in this, but this movie should have been career-ending for all these people. Like, after seeing this, people should have said, fuck, these guys are terrible. In particular, Martin Short. Have we mentioned how much we don't like Martin Short?
Not enough.
Well, back at the lab, with only minutes of oxygen left in the pod, Jack uses hairspray to force himself to sneeze out the pod. Tuck and the pod are successfully enlarged, and he is reunited with Lydia and finally gets to meet Jack in person. The film ends at Tuck and Lydia's wedding. When they climb into the limousine, it is revealed that the cowboy is the driver, and the shrunken Scrimshaw and Canker are hidden inside a suitcase in the trunk. Jack recognizes the cowboy and chases the limousine to rescue the newlyweds.
So I was offended. I don't mind when a movie is confident that there's going to be another one, that it's a sequel. As an audience, I remember watching Back to the Future, and the DeLorean flies off and it says to be continued. Boom. Yes, I'm excited for movie number 2. But this movie was so confident they were going to get another one that you do that entire at the end. We get all of the people at the wedding. We don't get any closure. Oh, yes, we do. The supervillains are in the trunk. They're still 50%. Oh, where'd the cowboy go? Oh, here's the cowboy. All of a sudden now Jack is a superhero. He's confident. He's quitting his job. He somehow is now driving the Mustang. I guess that's his car. And we get a setup for part 2 that I think they should have waited a little bit, because they did not deserve a second movie, and they were confident that it was going to happen.
Well, and why are the cufflinks the chips? I mean, did they steal the tech? Like, was there a plan? They were going to shrink other things. It was hidden in plain sight. It was so confusing.
It's reckless.
Well, and the other thing that I think is super confusing too is, did they get married like the next day? Is that what happened? Because Meg Ryan's character is no more pregnant. The cruise that Jack was supposed to go on hasn't happened yet. And so is this like a 24-hour wedding? Because that's a lot of planning. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of dresses. All of this stuff to be coordinated in such a short amount of time. And we know where they're not in Vegas. And I also thought it was a little bit of a bummer for Jack because I didn't like him or his character, but poor guy's, on the edge of dying of anxiety and he loses his vacation. He gives it up to them. I mean, it just, I don't know. It felt really messy.
Yeah, seriously. He's a cashier at like a Save Mart. He's not banking. How much is Tuck going to make off this invention that he obviously had a part in? But a bigger question is Lydia. I was confused by her motivation. The kiss earlier on, I felt like she enjoyed it, knowing it was Jack. And in here, she gives him a kiss on the lips. She's just been married, and she gives him this look to where Jack is kind of confused. He feels like he has a chance. Was there something more there?
So I think you haven't experienced this, Big D, because you're a 6'7" specimen of a man. But if you're a normal human, like say me, sometimes you meet a lady and you have a little bit of a romance, and that she goes back to the other dude because the other dude is like, she's addicted to him. I think that's what happened here. Yeah, there was definitely a moment there. First of all, you kissed my wife on my wedding day. I'm throwing you in the trunk of that limousine, and then I'm driving you off a fucking cliff, and you can't drive my car.
No.
Or use my cufflinks. But I think, Big D, that the situation here is that she has feelings for him, but she's addicted to Tuck because he knows that if he plays Cupid by Sam Cooke, she'll just, it's a panty dropper and she's all his.
Mm.
Yeah.
All these issues that we're discussing right now are not good issues for a children's movie. And getting back to the beginning of this podcast, when my aunt took me to the video store, if your theory is true, Big D, and said, let's rent a movie that this kid can watch, and then hopefully he goes to bed by 10, so we can have the rest of our night to ourselves. Like, as a child, I thought this was a really good movie, but I don't know why. Like, it's all adult humor, adult issues, being a hypochondriac, heartbreak, alcoholism, and it's so long and it's so slow. Was it just what you said, Big D, that look, he's tiny?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. But I guarantee when they were sitting there, the vibrator scene, they kind of glanced at each other, and that's what went on after the viewing of this movie.
And on that note, it is time for our wipe scores. Our wipe scores are our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is a pristine white bunny rabbit that appears early in the movie and never plays a role at any point. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster. It is meeting your death as a one-handed man with a sex attachment on one hand while you fall into a pit of stomach acid. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Innerspace?
So I didn't think this movie was that good. I certainly didn't think it was funny. It made me miss Honey, I Shrunk the Kids because that's the only other shrinking genre movie I had seen. And that is a really wonderful film. We still watch that in my house. The kids love it. And it actually made the idea of being miniature go from, hey, they're small to, it being something clever and relatable. And this one just doesn't have that. It's kind of a mess. It's pretty clunky. And I don't think it really knew what it was supposed to be. I think they wanted it to be a comedy and wanted it to be a sci-fi, and it wound up being neither. And so because of that, I think it's pretty forgettable. And so I'm giving it 4 wipes. I'm sorry, Jody.
All right, that's 4 wipes from Ash. I'm going to agree with you. Science fiction movies should make you think. And all I could think about during Innerspace is how unamused I was with Martin Short. Comedies should make you laugh. That's the second half of this sci-fi comedy. And the only time I laughed is when Tuck tried to gloss over the fact he'd programmed a robot arm to give him hand jobs. Innerspace had some outstanding visual effects. I don't think any of us disagree with that. But it really failed as an overall sci-fi comedy. And there are so many good ones out there that you really have to take this movie to task. And I agree, 4 wipes.
For me, I totally agree with everything that you both said. I think the movie had great ideas, but there were just too many of them. Boil it down to what works. Honey, I Shrunk the Kid works because they focus on the normal sized person shrunk down in the environment. We needed to see more in the body. Take away the stuff going outside because that's the amazing fun part. I want to see the kids running through the yard, in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or interacting as someone sweeping. That was the cool stuff. I just felt like this was perfected, this formula with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And I mean, Ash, as a parent, think about that friendly ant scene in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Oh, no.
When that friendly ant sacrifices themselves.
Spoiler alert.
For the family against, was it a scorpion?
It was the scariest scorpion.
And the ant sacrifices itself. This movie had none of that heart. And it had potential. And we always said, Gene, that's the worst when you have a wasted potential. Spielberg on board, money, great actors. I got to stick with you. It's a 4-white movie for me.
Yeah.
And Big D, if you think about the movie this is based on, Fantastic Voyage from 1966, like that's a superior movie because they kept it, like you said, simple. You got a scientist. They try to assassinate him. He's got a blood clot in his brain. So you send a team in a submarine to fix the clot. That's it. That's the mission. Great. That's the movie, right? It's there's no bunny, there's no Mr. Igo. They just keep it simple, and I agree. So that is a clean sweep, Jody. Rare feat. 4 wipes from me, 4 wipes from Ash, 4 wipes from Big D gives us 4 wipes for Innerspace.
And with an average wipe score of 4 wipes off your butt, that now ties this in the 181 spot with Real Genius, Arachnophobia, Gleaming the Cube, and The Crow.
I like The Real Genius a lot better than this.
I like The Crow, but I wasn't on that cast, so I can't take any heat for that.
Yeah, it's not as good as I remembered it. That's all I got to say about The Crow.
Yeah, but the rest of them, I feel like it's right in some good company.
Yeah, Gleaming the Cube for sure.
Oh, it's terrible.
4 wipes means it has some moments. So, put that under your pillow when you go to bed tonight, Jody. All right, Big D. Do we have any voicemails or emails this week?
We do. We have a voicemail coming all the way from England and our listener, Matt.
Hey, Big D, Ashley, and Gene. Saw that you're going to be doing Dazed and Confused, and you said you hadn't had many voicemails, so I thought I'd record you guys a message. I tried to leave a voicemail before, but phoning from the UK actually would have cost me a fortune. Super jazz, you're doing Dazed and Confused. Definitely one of my favourite films of all time. As a child who was born in the last 2 weeks of the 70s, don't really know much about it. And being from the UK, the whole sort of end of term craziness that goes on in this film is definitely alien to me. For me, like the cast is just all stars. Mila Jovovich is just ever beautiful. Ben Affleck just plays the douche so well. Adam Goldberg just weird, and Rory Cochrane just ultimate stoner. It really kind of just made me realise that like being a child of the 70s is probably the coolest, especially growing up in the 80s. So I'm super jazzed to see what you guys think of it. I mean, Matthew McConaughey as well is just iconic. All right. So yeah, thanks very much. Please don't shut over this movie because I love it. And just keep living. L-I-V-I-N.
I got to thank Matt. Matt first attempted to call us and spent £3 on a 20-second phone call. So that was why when he called back in with this, I love the dedication, Matt. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, and if you're English and you don't want to leave a voicemail, you can also just write an email, and then Ash will do it in her best English accent.
Mm-hmm. Challenge accepted.
And as a reminder, if you'd like to call in like Matt did, you can call us at 914-719-SHAT, or you can create a voice recording and email it to host@shatthemovies.com, or write us at host@shatthemovies.com. Big D, what movie do we have coming up next?
Gene, next week we have a sports film which tells the story about a man named Happy, who all he has ever wanted to do is be a professional hockey player. But he soon discovers he may actually have a talent in playing an entirely different sport, golf. When his grandmother learns she is about to lose her home, Happy joins a golf tournament and tries to win enough money to buy it for her. With his powerful driving skills and his foul-mouthed attitude, Happy becomes an unlikely golf hero, much to the chagrin of the well-mannered golf professionals. Commissioned by Steve W., released in 1996, and this is one of those movies I remember loving.
And Steve, by the way, thinks it's an absolute crime that we've never done a movie starring Adam Sandler. I do think we have a few coming up, though, so we're going to make that right in 2021, Steve.
I love this movie, you guys. Dirty Work was not my thing, but all things Sandler. I'm so flippin' excited about next week.
Well, thank you, Steve, for commissioning that movie. Thank you, Jody, for commissioning this movie. And thank you, Matt, for calling in. That's all for this week of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Again, the phone number is 914-719-SHAT. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatontv.com. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review that helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Ash Lafley, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
For 400 years, golf has been a gentleman's game. A game of tradition, etiquette, and above all, sportsmanship. Until now.
Y'all ready for this?
Meet Happy Gilmore. He was a hockey player.
Touch my puck, baby! Don't you ever touch my puck!
Who was skating on thin ice. But when his grandma needed his help,
Mrs. Gilmore owes the IRS $270,000. We're going to have to sell the house to someone else.
But she's an old lady. I mean, look at her. She's old.
he discovered a new talent.
The house is like 400 yards away. That's unbelievable.
Now he's going from the rinks
Step right up, folks. See if you can outdrive the amazing golf ball whacker guy.
to the links.
Hey, where you going with those clubs, punk? I'm your caddy.
He's going to be on the tour. That's super.
He's got the swing. He's got the drive.
He shoots, he scores!
He's got the balls.
Oh, God, that hurt a little, but I'm all right.
Quite a large and economically diverse crowd here at the Invitational. I guess it's the new tour sensation, Happy Gilmore.
Hey, if I saw myself in clothes like those, I'd have to kick my own ass.
And while he's trying to keep Granny out of the rest home,
I'm telling you, this place is perfect. You're going to make friends in no time.
Get me out of here!
he's driving the game of golf
Why didn't you just go home? That's your home. Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
straight into the ground.
Damn you people, this is golf!
I'm Bob Barker. Looks like you and I are going to be playing together today.
This guy sucks. All right, let's go.
Universal Pictures presents Adam Sandler
The price is wrong, Bob.
as golf's missing link, Happy Gilmore.